We are weeks away from the Carolina Panthers reporting to training camp. We are going to get you caught up on all the latest news and rumors, as well as some additional content related to the defense. Without further ado, let's go.
Brace yourself for the ultimate Carolina Panthers experience. Welcome to Two Growls, One Roar, the podcast that hits harder than a Luke Kuechly tackle. We're diving deep into the heart of Panther Nation, bringing you unrivaled passion, insider takes, and pure gridiron fire. From Wilmington to the cosmos, this is your home for the fiercest football talk east or west of Charlotte.
Welcome in, folks, to another edition of the Two Growls, One Roar podcast. Hope you guys are doing well. It is a little bit slower for the next week or so for me and the show, as we'll have family, vacation, time off. And so that means we're not going to be recording any content. So this may be the last episode you get for the next, 3 or 4 days, which for my show is a pretty big time. We'll see how this fits in, but I think it works because a lot of people are going to be spending time with friends and family and listening to 4th of July playlists, at least those here in the United States, for the 4th of July. And hopefully you guys get the day off, get to enjoy that time. But as always, we are here to get you guys covered on all things Carolina Panthers leading up to training camp. It is hard to believe we are at the end of June. July is right around the corner. As I record this, we have training camp really weeks away. Rookies will report on July 21st, followed by veterans on July 22nd. We have the first preseason game with the Cleveland Browns on August 8th. We can assume that the joint practice, which is published with the Cleveland Browns, and I don't have it in front of me, but it's going to be a few days before that. Of course, we don't get to attend. Joint practice with the Houston Texans in August 14th. Preseason game number 2 at the Texans, and then the final preseason game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So it's a busy time of year now. It's slow when it comes to content, but we know that, folks, man, it is right around the corner, and I've got to get prepared so that I can get you guys prepared for the seasons. We're going to take it up a notch this year. I feel like we hit a pretty good rhythm last year, previewing the games, doing our post-game analysis of everything that we saw. But we're going to take it up a notch this year, get back to the graphics. I got a lot of things in mind, and so that's going to be partially where I sit. I can't believe it. Like, just being honest right now, as I record this, I cannot believe we are here. Like, we've reached this point. Now, there's really not that much going on right now as far as storylines, because we know there's a lot of folks out. We just had the tight end university camp, tight end U, whatever it is, and a bunch of guys were out there. Panther representation was well. Tommy Tremble, Ja'Tavion Sanders, not sure if Mitchell Evans got the invite or not, but really good turnout. Of course, Greg Olsen also there. A lot of the media clips are circulating. We've seen the clips circulating of Xavier Legette working out with the route god, somebody he worked out with last year. And so for folks that maybe were a little bit concerned that he wasn't in the lab, that he wasn't working, he's there. He's out. He's working. He's putting in the work, just like I called out and he retweeted or commented on way back during the Kentucky Derby, which also feels like yesterday, but it's been a pretty good time away. So this is going to be a unique preseason for the Carolina Panthers, and the fact that Panthers fans are not really going to be involved. And there's a lot of benefit to that. One, just for the fans, in my opinion, that maybe don't make it to a game, which, like, for us, we hardly make it to any games. I haven't been to a game in years. NFC Championship game. It's been 10 years. It's wild to say that I have not been to a Panthers game in person since the NFC Championship game. Schedules are tough. We live 3.5 hours away. This year, we're looking to get there. We're going to try to get it to one game. But all that said, we enjoyed training camp. So that is where I spend a lot of my time. You know, we'd go to two to three practices a year. It was really fun a couple years ago when we went for a few practices, then traveled up to Charlotte when they had FanFest in Bank of America Stadium, Bryce Young's rookie season. So you got to be a part of them bouncing back and forth. Last year, we only got to make it up for a day So we had 3 years of training camp in a row, which is fun. And last year we just went to the one practice in Uptown Charlotte. I was impressed, but as I've stated, if you follow this show, there is a reason that fans will not be there. Just look at the construction that's happening. So we've been told this is a 2-year plan as far as, fans not being there for the next 2 years. Maybe, with planning in place, there's a way to get a few more open practices. I know logistically it's not the best, but maybe the local university in Charlotte seems to have a few openings there. Or, going back to South Carolina for a practice or two, or any of the schools in North Carolina. So we'll see how that plays out. With that said, for right now, your chance to see the Panthers is going to have to be at one of the preseason games, or what we anticipate if they do Fan Fest, which they should, because that's in the stadium. I would guess it's going to be a pretty good show and should be a pretty good turnout. I know last year they did back together at Clemson, then Fan Fest at Bank of America Stadium. And I don't know if the coordination, everything was off. It was early in the morning. It didn't go well. I would anticipate that they've got something nice planned for the fans this year to make up for the fact that we don't get to see them during the training camp time. And it's a fun time. I mean, it really is. It's hot, which last year I think they got a pretty good break with the heat. Most of the days it ended up being pretty cool, but it is hot. And, looking at the joint practices too, that would have been a fun experience, of course. You go back to last year practicing with the Jets, and we did well against them by all reports. Panthers fans probably thought, oh man, we're on to something. And unfortunately they were, but it was just later, and the Jets were just a bad football team. So with that said, you do have an opportunity, of course, with the Cleveland Browns and everything that's going on there with the quarterback battle. Shedeur Sanders, Pickett, Flacco. I mean, Gabriel. There's more quarterbacks there than I could spend time going through. You still have Deshaun Watson in the shadows, who I'm not going to play, but that's a crowded room. So you have that storyline, which will be nice to see. Of course, we won't get to see it, unfortunately, but hey, at least the preseason game in person at Bank of America. We all know the history and story with CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, Houston Texans, Carolina Panthers. So we have an opportunity to see both of those guys. And maybe if you are in the Houston area, like I said, actually, I keep backtracking this because that joint practice in Houston is going to be past the training camp period. So typically, if they're going to open it up and let folks in, it would be during the training camp time, because once, training camp is passed and the first preseason game is gone, you pretty much shut down as far as fans availability. But the media availability should be there, and I'd expect at least the Carolina Panthers to send their folks out there, so we should get a good snapshot, because what we've learned over the last 2 or 3 years is that a lot of these joint practices is where the teams like to see the reps. Now, I think this year we're going to see Bryce Young a little bit more in the preseason, and just makes sense considering the bumpy, slow start, the rough start, and the fact that he did get better as he got more comfortable. Now, I think there was just a lot of things happening there, but seeing him get some early snaps, build that confidence, and see it at game speed translate into the season, because we cannot afford a slow start. If we are going to carry the expectations that are out there that are set forth by the media, which that doesn't necessarily mean anything, but there is a shift happening in the mindset of who the Carolina Panthers are. A lot of folks bullish on what this team can be, meaning like, yeah, I think this team actually can turn the corner. I think they're headed on the right direction. The decisions that they made are there. You don't have people bashing Tepper. Like, it's been a complete change from what it has been. So it's a long ways to get there, but this team has to start out on the right foot. And I think getting there is being able to play in the preseason as much as possible. I really want to see them getting involved. Now, as we get back on track, talking through the offseason, not necessarily focused on what's happening, there's a few things that we are going to continue to monitor up until training camp, because to me, it just feels like the Carolina Panthers, and we've had a lot of reports coming out, are still interested in the safety. Now, that doesn't mean that they don't trust Damani Richardson or their new draft pick, Lathan Ransom. But it does signal that, if all things line up, that the Carolina Panthers could go out and get a safety. So we'll continue to hear rumors about the safety position leading up into training camp. Another position group, and again, we're going to hear a lot of conversation, is the cornerback position. I think when we talk about the three starters on that side of the ball with Jaycee Horn, Mike Jackson, and Shaw Smith-Wade, that we feel confident, but it's with the depth that's there behind him. Now, all that said, I don't know that there are really that many options that are available and in play for the Carolina Panthers. So it's one of those things where I imagine as we get into camp, whether it's a veteran, whether we have some cuts, waivers that happen along the way, the Carolina Panthers likely are going to explore those two position groups. And again, our focus, or where we think the Carolina Panthers sit and how successful they can be this year, resides on Bryce Young delivering, staying where he was from where he finished the season, in the defense. And I do have, like I said, I'm very bullish on this team, but I do think, getting into the realm of who this team can be, that the defense is going to be much improved. Now, a rumor that's floating out there in speculation is this idea that there's a perfect fit with Trey Hendrickson, who continues to be battling between the Cincinnati Bengals and trying to get a contract and managing his holdout. Bengals, on one hand, are just doing their own thing with all this. Now, we know there's a lot of second-round picks. Only 2 second-round picks have signed their contracts for this year. A lot of it having to do with guarantees and changes to how much these guys can get. But if you are one of those that's sitting here, and even Fox Sports, David Hellman proposed that this was a perfect landing spot for the Carolina Panthers to get Trey Hendrickson, I just don't see it. It would be great, but he is older, and the Carolina Panthers, and now Jadeveon Clowney is older than Hendrickson. The Panthers had the opportunity to keep a veteran in the locker room at a minimum amount. Now, Trey Hendrickson, yes, he is an all-pro. He led the NFL in sacks. So if you could get him for the price that's right, yeah, but the odds are he's going to want more money than the Carolina Panthers can afford based on where they sit. Now, the Carolina Panthers have some wiggle room. They have roughly $18 million in cap. Maybe $1 million of that's going to go to Scorton. But they've got room to work on that side of the ball and, pay the safety, pay a cornerback. All that is in place for them. But I don't see them going out and trying to splash, especially considering how much they invested on that side of the ball through the draft and in free agency. But I'm excited about this defense. Like I said, now, rumor-wise, I don't think there's really going to be any other rumors. I try to do my best to keep you guys updated with anything and everything that I hear, anything that I may think. We try to stay in the realm of what's real, what's actually possible, instead of, getting out into this idea of just making stuff up and, running with things that don't really apply. So that's where we sit right now. One of the things that I wanted to go back to today, one of the things I wanted to go back and speak on for a little bit, was the defensive overhaul and the potential transformation. You guys continue to hear me talk about how and why I think this team can be successful, how I feel confident in this team, in the coaching staff. And again, I'm don't know that I am all the way sold on Ejiro Evero, but it's also a situation where if I was doing an evaluation of him, an honest evaluation, yes, I will admit there's numerous things that didn't go well last year, and we can continue to talk about injuries. We can continue to talk about the lack of depth or the lack of talent that was on the roster. Coaching has to play a certain part of that. You've got to be able to do something with nothing. That's the state of the NFL. That's how it works. Injuries and all that occur, and you got to figure it out. I do think, though, part of me, when I'm analyzing this and Ejiro Evero, I also want to be rational with myself and say, well, you know what? I don't know that we know who he is just yet, because we saw the short stint in Denver the year. We saw a pretty successful year, his first year here, and then he just gets blown out of the water last season. Over 6,800 yards allowed. We know about the rushing yards, 3,057, top 5 in NFL history, 534 points. I mean, you stack all those things together, and it's hard to picture and say, oh, yeah, I do feel confident, or I do feel good as a Carolina Panthers fan heading into this season. But I think the Panthers did what they had to do, and really where all of this starts, when you talk about run defense, when you talk about quarterback sacks and getting pressure and being able to force turnovers, it starts with your front seven. You have a healthy Derrick Brown who's going to help stabilize that interior. You've brought in Turk. You've brought in Bobby Brown. You drafted 2 outside edge rushers, young prospects that can develop. And on top of that, you bring in Pat Jones with DJ Wonham, who's already here, and you set yourself up to be successful. We've heard about the pairing of the outside linebacker room, the veterans paired with the rookies, getting them to know. You've heard about Scorton as well as Princely Umam working together in the hotel rooms, putting chairs, running through plays. The effort and the level of consistency that I think we are going to see is going to be vastly improved. Now, as we've said, for me, there's still question marks, but I don't think we're talking about a defense going from 32 to 10. I think we're talking about a defense that needs to go from 32 to 15, 16, 14, be within the top half of the NFL. If you're somewhere within that range and the offense improves, which I think they're going to improve by another 4 or 5 points per game, coming off of 20 to around 25, if you can just get it down to where your defense gives up 20, 21, 22 points per game, you're going to be in every game. The biggest thing, some of the busted coverages, the big plays, and again, just the overall run defense. We have seen that when this team, although it was not really hardly any last year, could stop the run, that they were successful. I mean, we're tired of seeing backs go for 100 yards, not just one back, but 2 backs on the same team getting close to 100 yards, giving up the explosive plays, not getting to the quarterback, not making contact with the runner until they're 3, 4, 5 yards downfield. All those things, like it's set up for disaster. And to be honest, when you think about where this team was in week 1, sure, of last year, yes, like the turnovers, all those things did not help, but it was a relatively healthy team for what we had. And to see it, the performance that we saw, and again, their backs were against the wall, but it wasn't good. I mean, we saw the continued busted coverage, letting things over the top, not being able to make a play when you need them to make a play to get off the field. We consistently saw that last year. So it is a big year. It's continuing for us to talk through this, and like I could talk about it until I'm blue in the face, but we have to see improvements from Ejiro Evero. It's a situation to me where there is potential, and I don't know really if this is the Dave Canales model, but we saw him go ahead and bench Bryce Young as early as he did, that if things just aren't trending in the right direction for where this defense should be or needs to go, that you could see change a little bit sooner than you would anticipate, meaning, hey, somebody's out, somebody's fired. And again, I don't want to say that that's like the path that we're heading down, or that you're absolutely going to get there, but it is a possibility that you could see that early on. I didn't even talk about Cam Jackson, of course, being drafted as well to help fortify the defensive front. I still have concerns about the linebacker position. I don't know who Trevin Wallace is going to be. We saw him miss a little bit of time. I don't know how Josey Jewell is going to be another year older. I think he can be successful. And then Christian Rozeboom behind that. So you've got a few guys, but I look at the linebacking core that we need to see some strengths. But the way you get those guys freed up is you have a stout front seven that can do the things that they're supposed to do, control their gaps, maintain where they're supposed to maintain, and then those guys can play more freely. You also invested so much on the outsides. You invested so much on the defensive line. I mean, worst case scenario, if you can't deliver with what you have here, or these guys aren't as good as you thought they were, then we're in for a long season. Like, just being honest, and we're setting ourselves back, which I know I'm not at the point to want to talk about what could be, how bad it could be, but you have to do these things if you're a Panthers fan, in your mind say, well, yeah, I can envision it not going the right way. Like, we've seen multiple times where we've invested in a player, gave him too much money, and it doesn't pan out. He's here for another 2-3 years. Then we have to go cut him early. We get dead cap money. we don't want to talk about that right now. We want to talk about the success. And I think a lot of the success that we're going to see has to be Patrick Jones, DJ Wonham leading us very early at the edge position with Nick Scorton and Princely Omiyalen getting their reps and starting to make an impact as quickly as possible. So outside of that, the safety position, again, which you've already talked about, needing someone there, I think Tabani Richardson can do it. I do feel confident, but I mean, as far as the depth that we have, we don't really have depth at that position. And again, we lost like 80% lost Xavier Woods, who played every single snap last year. Every single snap, led the NFL on the defensive side of the ball. You lose him, and that's part of the equation. And then you lose a bunch of guys that were underneath him. And again, you didn't lose a lot of talent, if we're being honest, but the depth does help. So we have to keep that in mind. And we also talked about, of course, the cornerback position. And again, I've already talked about it, so I don't want to harp on it too much. But it does feel like, Ejiro Evero on the hot seat. As we mentioned, there's no excuses. That's the biggest thing that I want to emphasize, that there is no excuses. There is heightened accountability. You've got to motivate these guys. You found the pieces that you wanted. You built this team the way that you wanted on the defensive side of the ball. The defensive improvement, the urgency, the expectations for this unit have to be there. There needs to be a measure of Panthers football that we're accustomed to. We want to talk about getting back to Panthers football. It's got to start on the defensive side of the ball. Defense needs to win us a few games. Again, I think Bryce Young is going to come out. I don't know if he's going to shock people per se, but I do think he's going to kind of set this thing on fire early. And if we can put a good defense around him, you never know how far and how good this team can be in the long run. So I'm excited for it. I think this team is primed to get into that 9 to 8 win range. Well, 9 to 10 win range, and firmly place themselves in contention for a wild card spot and or the NFC South. As always, folks, this is Carolina Dad. Again, appreciate you guys tuning in. Hope y'all have a good one. See y'all later.